Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of SDRescue, brought to you by SD Revolution. My name is Grayson Fulbright, and I'm hosting this with my very best friend, Austin Fuller. How are you doing today, Austin?
I'm doing well. I didn't know I was elevated to very best friend status. I'm flattered.
Very recently promoted.
Ah,
Um, I'm glad for everyone that got the chance to join us today. We have a really good email that we're going to be breaking down from a tech vendor that's well known in the space, and I think it's an interesting use case to kind of dive into. Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel because that's the best place at the moment to get updates on each of these weekly live streams.
all right. So let's jump right into the email. The other thing, remember, friends, send us your emails. Connect with Grayson and I on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to have you on the show or to look at it. But for now, we're gonna jump right into this one. Really, again, like every week, always really excited. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit for the friends at home so they can take a look at this. All right. So let's have a read, shall we? Austin spoke with this person, and he mentioned that your sales teams live and breathe, quote, in Salesforce. I shared with him that we can help with that, but as a CRO, he didn't have the time, so I hope this comes valuable to you. Our company saves sales reps 1.5 to 2 hours each day, 7.5 to 10 hours a week by eliminating the tedious task of logging information into Salesforce.com, allowing your sales teams to spend more time on revenue-generating activities. We do this with company A, B, and C, and I'm confident we can do it with your company. We've been treating these conversations as a way for us to get to know your organization, for you to learn more about us. We're always changing. So when the timing is right, it can be in your back pocket. Would love to talk on Monday or Tuesday. Okay. Let's scroll down to the color codes. All right, so let's get into this. Initial impressions when I read this. I think so. So here's something that I really like about this, and this taps on my personal philosophy for cold email that most reps get wrong. Most reps, so let's say the bottom 50% or even bottom 75%, I don't know what the numbers are, but new reps especially, and people that just haven't gotten good at cold email, rely on the email to do most of the work. My philosophy with cold email is that it's about what you do before the success of the email is dependent on what you've done before you hit send. So to the degree that you stack the deck in your favor before you hit send, that will ultimately impact the outcome of a lot of the cold emails you send, because there's just so many now. And the odds that the buyer has your problem and they know it's a problem and it's urgent enough that they reply to your email is very low. So the thing that I do like about this is that they went and talked to somebody else. Particularly, they went and spoke with who I report to, my boss, right? This said, hey, by the way, spoke with your boss. So you already get a +1 from me for that as far as setting up the email for success. What else, Grayson? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree here. I think it kind of goes to the heart of context. Whatever additional information that you can pull into your email to make them, A, notice you more, and then B, feel like you're a little bit more important than that other cold email next to you in the inbox, then it can really resonate with people and motivate responses. And this is one of the best ways to do it, like you had mentioned, which is kind of pulling people into the conversation, or at least letting people know that you've pulled people into the conversation that are targeted. Because you haven't spoken on this, but I imagine if I was the director of sales and I reported directly to my CRO, and a sales rep had done the due diligence to just lead with the fact that they've spoken with my boss first. I mean, it might be a little intimidating, so be careful how you do that. But overall, that's immediate clout and immediate credibility that says this person knows what we're about and kind of how companies like us operate. And so big kudos there for using that, what I call context, to immediately give them a reason to open, if no other reason than the fact that, whoa, they spoke to my CRO. I think another thing to point out that's really great is how they go into their value prop. I think we've reviewed emails in the past that tend to add too much information or add too many benefits and add too many pieces to the puzzle. And I think this email does a wonderful example of being laser targeted. We don't disclose the brand, but this is a technology that does far more than simply help with logging information in Salesforce, and yet they chose deliberately to be very, very precise and not really talk about anything else. There's all these different angles, but they know, and they must have some sort of theory that specifically this is something that should be a pain to buyers. This one thing will open up everything else that's going to be needed to talk about in discovery. So I really do love the way that they have structured the value prop. I think using both the benefits that they used in terms of how they can improve sales reps, and then also kind of mentioning that pain that I think many Salesforce users, likely align with and understand. The only big picture feedback I'd say is it does this thing that I think emails sometimes do, to where the first two lines are wonderful and they really impact, and then it loses steam. And I think there are some tweaks that could have been done in the very end of the email, and when mentioning the social proof, that would have done a lot in terms of getting people to follow through. Because I think the first two lines, by themselves probably would have gotten me to respond at a much higher rate than if they added all of that extra information.
That's a good point. I like that. So if you just hack the bottom off, your social proof email. So that's the one thing about the social proof, is the social proof wasn't very contextual. We didn't reveal any of the companies they used for social proof here. However, I will tell the viewers, they didn't look or act or behave anything like Nuark's does. They weren't the same size, like firmographically very different, and industry-wise very different. So, I think some of them were technology companies, but look, everything's a technology company just about nowadays. So the fact that we do something with computers isn't relevant social proof. But it's getting there. It's a step in the right direction. So I do want to talk about a little bit about this email here, and things that I like about it and why. So first off, you went to the CRO. Great. Next, and two, I think the other thing, too, it looks like you were honest, because he said he didn't have the time. So I hope this comes valuable to you. I coach my reps on this all the time. If you have to say, I think, I hope, maybe, you didn't do your job enough. You got a little bit more to go. Should have asked a couple more questions. Should have pushed him to a commitment of something, right? Like, you've got to time into something. He says, or she says, I don't know the gender of the person sending the email, but it says, so I hope this comes valuable to you. No. If you're going to talk to my boss, if you're going to get the CRO on the phone, if you're going to call and prospect into the CRO, by the way, props getting him on the phone. Don't waste that opportunity. You got the CRO on the phone. You should have said, okay, what is it? Hey, the email should read, Austin, Mark is his name. But so I'll reveal my CRO's name. But so spoke with Mark. He mentioned your sales teams live and breathe in Salesforce. He said that your problem was that they're logging activities manually, and that we can help with that. He didn't have the time to talk, but I know this will be valuable. Mark said this is a priority, right? Or Mark said this would be important to evaluate, right? You have the ability to like literally become an agenda item from someone's superior. If you can get to that point, if you can get to that place, do it. And so maybe they did that, but it wasn't made clear in the email to me. And by the way, Mark has never mentioned any of this to me, so it obviously wasn't that important. I just think there was something a little bit further you could have done in your conversation with my CRO to cement the value of what you could bring to us, right? So if logging information in Salesforce.com manually is the pain and the problem, because either A, you've spoken with somebody and they've told you that's the pain and that's how they're working, which by the way is incredible, right? The formulation of this email is wonderful. It's just the execution is only about 65 to 70% of the way there. You got the CRO on the phone. You should have found out one, maybe two things, and then that could have been 2 to 3 emails to convert me. Like, hey, talk to the CRO. You're logging information in Salesforce.com. Or the other one is like duplicate data, or you can't put opportunities into that's one. Your opportunities aren't getting touched frequently enough, right? They don't have enough activity within a 30-day span or something. Like, there are things you can find out if you've gone to the trouble of getting somebody on the phone, and put that in the email. This email is really, really close, and it's much better than any generic email that I get that has no context or nothing about the company in there at all, but it's just not quite there to get me to reply. So I didn't reply to this one.
Yeah,
sorry, really long monologue.
No worries. I do want to touch up on the point you made about that section there where it says, so I hope this comes valuable to you. And I think that is a good example area of when should you include information versus when shouldn't you? There's a lot of times where I think people get pressured to kind of fill the gaps and force context by using a lot of words. So it's like, if you can write a book to someone, they'll know everything about you and everything that they need to know about your outreach. But that doesn't work because people aren't going to read all of that. And so when you set the context, you also need to make sure not to overload people with information that might kill the deal. Because what Austin brought up was very valid. We talked earlier about, like, hey, props for reaching out to the CRO and actually getting on a phone call with him. Like, whoa, that's great. But it sounds like the outcome wasn't very positive or worth my time just by the way you presented it in the email. Right? Like Austin didn't talk to a CRO and see the outcome of the conversation. He glanced at the email, and the way that this person framed his context made it exuded that kind of like mindset of like, oh, I failed and I wanted to connect with you instead to see if you would pay attention to me. And I think that's one of those situations where you don't want to disclose that information. If it's not going to be helpful to you starting the conversation, why mention the outcome of your call with the CRO? If there wasn't something amazingly positive or some compelling event that's worth sharing with Austin, then just skip it. Get to the point. Say, hey, I spoke with your CRO. Here's what I found out. Here's why I'm reaching out. And like, can I share this with you or that with you? I think if they would have gotten rid of some of that extraneous information at the beginning and the end, it would have looked a lot shorter. It would have read a lot better. And I think it would have been more persuasive because it's less distracting. It kind of gets to the point, and that value prop becomes a lot more valuable. I think the only other piece that I would mention is kind of going back to what you talked about with the social proof. Is I totally agree, when you are using social proof, you don't want to always name drop the largest companies that you have. Yeah. And I think this is especially a big problem with companies that are funded, that are fast growing, that have
traction. Well-known. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously it's like a flaunt. It's like, hey, no one else has this brand, or hey, no one else has these three brands together, and that's great. And I think there's nothing wrong with that type of case study or that type of social proof, because it builds general credibility that says, regardless of who I am, regardless of whether or not they're a fit for me, they definitely have their stuff together. But I think that's something that you might want to put like in it, either on the marketing side, like at the beginning.
It goes in the marketing for sure.
Yeah, or later on in the sales process, if you've already personalized the discovery to them and really they just want to make sure you're credible enough to pull through.
You're right. So due diligence is in the due diligence is 100% the right place.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think so. That's something I think I get better at is, hey, here's the Fortune 500s we work with. You know, when people are like hesitating towards signing the DocuSign or doing whatever, be like, hey, look, here's our Fortune 500 case studies. Here's how many customers we have. And ultimately, I think it's telling the buyer story, because I think, so here's the thing that prospects get wrong a lot, in my opinion, is they go, hey, what companies, so like, what companies do you work with in our industry? Doesn't matter. Like it literally doesn't matter. They could be doing the exact same thing. Like you could work with one of our competitors, and if you're, so like TrustWave is one of our competitors. If you're a vendor for TrustWave, cool. I don't care. TrustWave is a huge company. They're like at least 10 times, they're more than 10 times our run rate. Their run rate, their annual revenue is 10 times our annual revenue, easily. And it's just like we don't look anything. They have like 5 or 6 global offices, and we have one in Southfield, Michigan, baby. It's really nice if anyone wants to come visit. It's closed right now, but very nice building. But you know, do you have case studies or stories of buyers that are of people who've bought from you that are like what the buyer's going through right now? That's social proof. Did you solve the same problem for a similar person? And can that buyer empathize with the person you're sending them to talk to? I think it's big. I think it's a big one that people miss all the time. But do you want to, before we jump into the Grayson rewrite, you made a really good point that it would be a lot shorter. Do you want to know how I'd write this email if I were this guy? It's really short. It would be, hey Austin, spoke with Mark. He mentioned you guys log activities manually in Salesforce.com. That's no fun. Right? Who likes that? Ain't nobody like logging stuff manually in Salesforce. I have to log it. The reps have to log it. It's no fun. Whatever. That's no fun. Or whatever. I would say something like, hey, Austin, spoke with Mark. He said you guys log activities manually in Salesforce.com and that I should talk to you to evaluate, see if we can help you. Or you can say we help to, or just like one line in there difference. Like literally that's it. I write really short emails when I have leverage like this. Spoke to Mark, Salesforce.com manually, and then I go into like, we can get rid of that. Let's meet. That's it. Period. I probably would have responded to that just because at the time we were evaluating sales tech vendors, right? Like I didn't respond to this email because it was just on purpose. Like I was actively evaluating. I had like 3 or 4 other vendors that I was meeting with and having demos with, and I purposely didn't reply to this email because I didn't think that it was too templated. It didn't. You had all the leverage. You had the keys to the kingdom. You talked to the guy that signs, and he said, "Yeah, this is our problem." All you have to do is say, hey, Austin, talk to your boss. Said you have this problem. We fixed that problem. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah. Send. When would you like to talk? That's it. That's how I would have rewritten it. But
yeah, I agree. And I think that's a good point, just to kind of make like a 10-second snip. But I think it's a great point you made that when you have context, you don't need as much an email. Like I was being serious when I said
yes,
the fact
shorter.
that you spoke with a person can be enough to get them to both read and take action on it. Like full stop.
When you have, I think so. What I also don't think reps understand, and this is the great, and I didn't. I will call myself out here. I did not understand when I was an SDR at all what I was doing until I became a closer and a full cycle AE, because then I had to go like meet with executives and pitch them and I slowly learned by getting punched in the face, proverbially, not literally, on deals. Like, look, the transition back in the day from setter to closer was a painful one. It was like people go now like, oh, we don't want to throw our SDRs in and sink or swim and do that. That's expensive and terrible. Dude, back in my day, which wasn't that long ago, that was the methodology. They were like, cool, here's your career path. You're going to be an SDR and you're going to smile and dial until you've earned the right to go and sink or swim in the pool of AEs. Like that was it. It was like Navy SEALs Buds class. Ring the bell, although props to the Navy SEALs, they're way tougher than me. But you have to understand how to work and sound like an executive. When you have leverage, which is not a position people are in a lot of times as a salesperson. When you have leverage, use you can cash in a little leverage and, not write such a long flowery email. And look at the rewrite. It's much shorter. It's already like half the size. Whew. All right. Let's go to Grayson.
All right. Okay. So there should be a hi Austin there. So whoops, I forgot that part, but
you don't need it.
Just start from there.
I already know, know my name. You sent me an email.
Right. Hi, Austin. Your CRO, Mark, mentioned your reps live and breathe in Salesforce when we spoke, which means company likely shares the common struggle of time-consuming data entry tasks in Salesforce.com. Our brand saves reps 7.5 to 10 hours a week by eliminating tedious CRM logging tasks, helping sales teams at brands like Company A, Company B, and Company C spend 18 to 25% more time selling. Mark recommended I reach out to someone in sales leadership at Newark. So I'm reaching out here to offer a quick guided demo of our tool to see if it makes sense to connect further. Would you be open to a conversation? What do you think?
Great. So it's good, especially if look, so just so people know, I'm not my brief rewrite was how I would do it, and it was considering I had all the leverage, right? Like, let's assume we're the same rep and we don't know we have leverage, and we didn't tie Mark down in our conversation. He kind of just told us we live and breathe in Salesforce, and that's it, right? That's what sounds like what happened. He didn't get a lot from Mark based on his email. So rewriting it the way Grayson did, I think is really good. So CRO mentioned you live and breathe in Salesforce. I'm glad you kept that exactly the same, because I probably wouldn't have changed it, because you're quoting Mark's words is powerful. Yep, and then you go right in. So what I like here is that so the difference, I'm going to scroll up really quick so the people at home can see. You got rid of all the gobbledygook about the outcome, which is awesome. It doesn't sound like it went well. Like, even if it did go well, like, I don't know how it went, but you made it sound like it didn't go well. He gets into like quantifying the numbers and tedious task of logging information to Salesforce.com. Look, if you're selling sales tech and you get rid of the manual, if you sell anything into an industry, by the way, that eliminates the manual, most of the time people will infer the time savings. If not, they'll if it's painful enough. And I'm not saying not to spell it out specifically. You definitely need to do that. But I'm saying, like, what you do is you likely shares the common struggle of time-consuming data entry tasks into Salesforce.com. You bring up this. I don't even have to read the 7 to 10 hours a week. I already know I hate this. I already know it hurts. I'm like, oh, yes, I hate putting in stuff into Salesforce. Nobody loves it. And so you've done a really, like, what people notice, and if you notice, I really like the color code, because purple and gold are complementary colors, right? It's the Lakers colors, and royalty colors. And if you watch in the emails, purple and gold go together really well, because if you tell a story and then bring up specific pain points, your prospect puts themselves in the story and experiences their pain. This is how you create pain in copywriting, right? Is you attach a pain point into a story. And so me, as I read this, I go, oh yes, your company likely shares the common struggle of interesting, like, just that first block hurts to read. I keep going back to it because I have PTSD. And then you quantify it, like, by the way, so 7 to 10 hours a week by getting rid of all the CRM tasks, helping people. Here's the brands, like these companies spend more time selling. So now you've made your ROI, right? Like 18 to 25% more time selling, 7.5 to 10 hours a week back. We did it for these 3 companies. Your CRO mentioned that I reach out to someone in sales leadership. So, hey, by the way, he recommended that I speak with you. And then I'm reaching out here to offer a quick guided tour. Nice soft ask. I think this is a nice written, nice flowing email.
Well, thanks. I think what I tried to do here is really just cut down on what was already there, because you made a good point that, I mean, it was not a bad email. I thought it was
not
a great
bad at all.
email, in fact.
Not bad.
It had a little bit of extra info. It had a little bit of things that could be tweaked, but overall, I kept much of it. So to kind of quickly go through each section, like in the intro, it's great to tell stories and add context that's like real and true, like in their world. And so if you can mention something that someone they know has said, that is going to get people's attention and then get them to read. And then, to continue that attention, a lot of people will say something like, oh, your CRO mentioned this, that, this, so I wanted to reach out and introduce myself. And I think that's not a good approach, because you're building momentum and then immediately disclosing yourself as a salesperson trying to get attention. And so use that context, use all of the rapport and all of the info and ammo that you built before you sent the email, like, use that to get them to take action on the email. Like, that should be your focus. Like, don't use it and then throw it away and try to connect or try to like throw them a pitch. Tell them the story. And that's why I when I started to write this email, I had kind of gone in that direction of, ooh, how should I position this? How should I transition like this CRO's quote into a good conversation? And I decided that, hey, I'm just going to make a statement that I think is true of Salesforce users. They probably all deal with this and they probably don't like it. And so that's what I went with. And like you said, I try to make every kind of first line that I send as relatable as possible, because we talked about this before. Outcomes don't matter when it's the right list. When it's the right people, I just want to get them to see me. even if they don't respond, even if they don't respond positively, any step forward is a step. And so you want to get everyone's attention that you can for the list that you're sending to. Going into the value prop, I think that one's really easy. I'm going to skip that one really, but he or she did a really great job positioning the value prop. And all I did really is tie it into the social proof that they had, as well as kind of like not quantifying, but reframing the benefits that they shared. I think they kind of like put the hourlies for the week and then the hourlies for the day. And I just said, well, okay, why don't you just take that in a 40-hour work week and just find out the percentage and show them a different way. I think that's one point to note is there are different ways to get people to think about a pain or a solution.
Yeah, so I'm going to interrupt you there. Let me jump up. Let's look at this. So yeah, he goes 1.5 to 2 hours each day, 7.5 to 10 hours a week, tedious task of logging information to Salesforce.com. You trade, like you say something different here. This is important to note. 7.5 to 10 hours a week by eliminating tedious CRM logging tasks. Okay, so first of all, you've condensed it down to one set of numbers, right? I don't want to read this many hours per day and then calculate this. This is what it means. Like, that's boring to read. So here's 7 to 10 hours. And the other thing is he talks about eliminating CRM tasks. He never talks about what it actually translates to. You say spend 18 to 25% more time selling. That's a value. That's value. Not doing CRM data entry is what they're doing. It's the literal, if you read gap selling, it's the surface problem, it's the business, it's the technical problem. The business problem is that you're losing 25% of your selling time. And that's costing you dollars. And so you did a good job of, if you read Keenan's gap selling, you did a good job. You took it a step further and took a technical problem, put it into a business problem that I then go, oh yeah, 25% more time selling is more dollar signs. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, and
that's what I like about that.
Because I do love Keenan's gap selling book. One thing that he mentions about technical versus business problems is that, this like two different businesses can have the same technical problem in the space. Two of the same businesses could in fact have the exact same technical problem, but no business will have their own, like the same business problem. Everyone has their own unique
10,000%.
Exactly. Yep. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to translate into kind of the impact of saving that time, because maybe people just care about the amount of time. Maybe people just care about eliminating tasks. Maybe people are more strategic and they're actually wanting to see where the ROI is going to be. And so that's why you can sometimes reposition what you're talking about in different ways, just to try to get people to basically hook at something. To kind of recap very end, I just want to make a note that this person should have used that story and context they had in the beginning of the email to secure a next step at the end. And I think you mentioned that, but like, if you're going to go in and say, I am putting my reputation on the line to say that this person, said these things, and that's why I have permission to talk to you, you might as well go all in with that. So if you diligence to speak with the CRO, you're right. I would be like, hey, I just spoke with your CRO. I learned a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sure you'd want to hear from me. Let's chat. Like, you don't have to get complicated with it. I think if you'll just mention that context, because it's hard work that you've earned and now you can use in the email, like, throw it out there, like lean into it and get something out of it, rather than mentioning it at the top and then kind of fizzling out with just a general pitch and a general CTA at the end.
Yep. I think so for if you're an SDR out there, what I talk about leverage, what I mentioned in leverage, what I'm really talking about is expending social capital. If you're a new SDR, or if you've never been a closer, or you haven't spent a lot of time around corporate executives, you have to understand when you've earned and built social capital and then when to spend it, right? So that's a lot of what makes a good AE is what can how do you build cachet, credibility, social capital, and then you, most of the time as a salesperson or as an SDR, you're going to spend that social capital pitching. So, or if you're an SDR, getting a meeting. So you spent a lot of, I think this email was a really good example of building good social capital and not a good example of spending it to get the meeting. Right? So this is, as a big spender, baby, I know how to spend. You got to know how to spend. if you want to get the meeting.
Awesome.
Because
Well, I think looks like we're about at the top of the hour here. Just to leave everyone with a final thought, I want everyone to remember that Austin was an in-market buyer evaluating this person's exact solution space when that person reached out,
yes,
and yet they didn't get a response.
in market with budget, actively evaluating, looking for vendors.
Yes. And so as you leave the show, just remember that, like, imagine how much harder it is to get a response from people who aren't in that position. Learn to tweak your messaging to resonate rather than push.
Yeah, as we're right at 12, so I'll just summarize this. Like, when you have the social capital, spend it to get the meeting, and then you also have to recognize how to be compelling. How can you encourage me to take the action? And sometimes that means, twisting the arm a little. Hey, spoke with Mark, your boss, said this was important. We should chat, right? Are you telling me that my boss might be upset if I don't talk with you? In a very nice roundabout way. You don't say that. You don't type the email, Austin, your boss is going to get mad at you and you'll get fired if you don't talk to me. No. You add context, which creates momentum and leverage, but it gives me the little nudge that, oh yeah, my boss thinks this is important and he said this guy. And you don't have to say, unless he actually said this, don't say, hey, he asked me to tell you to get on a meeting with me. But say, hey, these are the problems. We solve these problems. This is what Mark talked about. We should probably have a discussion. And that's how you compel somebody. That's one way to compel somebody.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, so I know we're at the top of the hour. So for everyone who watched, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the SDRev YouTube if you haven't already. We'll see you next week, Monday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And make sure to either send us some of your emails if you'd like us to review. We'd love to have you on the show or have your emails on the show. And if you'd like to just do a one-on-one with Austin and I, just to chat about your email messaging or about your outreach, join the SDRev Slack. Just hit us up, either Austin or I, on LinkedIn, and we can get you set up and join the group, and we'd be happy to review your emails.
Indeed. We'd love to hear from you in the Slack. We'll talk to you all next week.
Sayonara.
See you, everybody.